For the price and the price point that I believe that these are being pitched at, it is a good solid release. Hi there everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jennifer Kirk, welcoming you up to the loft here on Weir Yard. Now today we've got a review of a model rail manufacturer that's actually quite new to me. It may be familiar to some of you, but I know that certainly in the US, in the UK and in Australia as well, this may well be a new mark for you as well. But I'm really excited to take a look at Chinese outline models. And of course, with a nation that size, it stands to reason that there's going to be a lot of model rail enthusiasts. And what are they using to model the scene that they see around them? So with thanks to Model Asia, who very kindly sent over two of the wagons in their range, let's take a look at the Chinese model scene that may be coming to a model shop nearer to you than you think soon. This video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. So come with me, I'm really excited to show you these new models. Model Asia is a brand which may be much more familiar to viewers from the Far East, and also they do have stockists in Europe, and I've also seen some stockists in Canada too. But for the UK, the US and possibly even the Australian market, this is a brand that you're probably not so familiar with. Now, I had a look online, and apart from finding those stockists, there's a lot of photographs as well of some of the model range, and they do look highly detailed. Made in some of the same factories that also contract to manufacturers that produce stuff for the UK market, it is an ideal opportunity to just take a look at what is probably a neglected railway scene in the West. Although with the last vestiges of industrial steam still out there in parts of China, increasingly enthusiasts over in this part of the world have made the pilgrimage over there to watch steam still working in an industrial setting. So it may be an area that a lot of people are quite interested to take a look at modelling. Indeed, at the recent Glasgow show, there was a Chinese outline model railway, and it really did look good and provided some really different ways of thinking about modelling the landscape and the structure of the trains, the buildings, the countryside that go with it. So it's certainly an area that holds a great deal of interest. These two freight cars were kindly sent direct from Model Asia out in China and actually arrived in a box with some really interesting Chinese stamps on. And I've never actually seen Chinese stamps in person before, and it was just that nice personal touch that they cared enough to send it personally handwritten out and with those stamps on. So it was just a little something that did really impress me. These are modelled in HO to 1 to 87th scale. We've got the HO coal hopper with a catalogue number C80-0038-469. And I don't speak or read Chinese, but I would guess that the Chinese character set here gives a brief description of the type of freight car, although you may know different. And certainly it's easy to forget that China has the largest population of any country on the planet, so it's only natural that there's going to be people there who also have an interest in railway modelling. And so given that China has become the centre of manufacturing excellence for a lot of models for all around the world, the US market, the Australian market, and indeed the UK market, it stands to reason that they would also be able to cater for the home market as well. And that's where these freight cars come in. But we've also got, very kindly sent over, this alternative liveried hopper, and this is C80-437-3524, and again the Chinese character set underneath I am guessing gives a more accurate description of the kind of freight car that this actually is. The boxes themselves are pretty striking in this silver and yellow. It's certainly a livery scheme that I'm not familiar with in any of the US or UK ranges, so these really would stand out on the shelf. So if you do see it's quite iconic looking boxes, then at least now you know what the brand is. Now, one of the things I've noticed, they've got these coal inserts in place, and they come with these handy tabs, I'm assuming, to make it easy to pull out the coal loads. And what I can see here is that whilst the coal load itself would probably benefit from just a sprinkling of crushed coal glued to the top, just to give it a slightly less shiny, more natural look, the interior of the freight car does have a lot of extra detail, including all of these internal ribs that would basically stop the freight car sides from bowing out with the weight of the coal or the aggregate or whatever would be being used with these wagons. There's also a representation of the bottom discharge doors, although the rest of the internal detailing is fairly light, and I suspect that these would benefit from some heavy weathering and maybe even a dusting of coal for when they're empty, but certainly they do offer some great value for money. In terms of pricing, I'm not 100% sure what their UK price rate would be, but certainly compared with the UK outline stock that we're used to, I was told that these come in at a much more favourable price. They come with the same type of KDs that people will be used to, particularly from the US outline stock, and I'm going to be running these with a US outline locomotive just to make use of those. The printing on the side of the car is really quite nice, and it's just something a bit interesting. And I know it's a thing over here, certainly in the UK, and I suspect in a lot of English-speaking countries, that people like to get tattoos with Chinese character sets. And I often wonder whether they really truly know what it says. And I can imagine Chinese people seeing photographs of some of these tattoos that people in the UK get and laughing heavily at probably says caution, filling may be hot, or something like that. But you can see on here that we've got the C80, and then that number actually corresponds with what was on the end of the box. So I think C80 is possibly the type of freight car, and then that's its running number. And I'm guessing that this Chinese character set here will be the name of the railroad, and possibly some kind of instructions, maybe to work between such and such and such and such, or something like that. Although we've got some very, very handy metric details on here which allow us to work out what some of the Chinese character set is. So I'm guessing that the 87 cubic meters, that is the Chinese for volume, I'm guessing. And then we've got the tare weight, 19.9 tons. It's either the fully loaded weight or at least the amount of cargo perhaps that it can carry at 80 tons. And I'll take a guess at the 1.1. It might just be something to do with minimum radius that this could be shunted around. The rivet detail, and we've also got here, I'm guessing, is a door that allowed maintenance access or sweeping out of the hopper there, is all produced quite nicely. It also has a fair few bits and pieces of separately applied detail, and I particularly like these foothold ladders on the side here. They are actually really nicely done. They're all picked out in the same yellow as the end of the hopper, but the yellow does continue down to the base there, making those quite eye-catching. On the end of the hopper, we can see in there we've got a representation of the brake gear underneath the hopper end. And there does seem to be a fair few separately applied parts in there, and certainly looking through from the side, you can see that there is a reasonable wealth of detail. Again, we've got some more printing on the sole bar. Really neat, and I'm guessing that under close magnification we're going to see a lot more than what the naked eye would be able to see. Further along we've got a whole load of other stencils, and actually looking very close to the C80 and the running number there is presented as if done with a stencil, so you get this kind of block lines within that do look really nice. Now I would be curious to know whether these character sets would be done by a sign writer or whether they would use stencils for these as well, but it's not entirely clear, and certainly there's no evidence in the reproduction of the character sets as to whether these would be done with a stencil or not. They're certainly very level, and so if it has been done on the real wagon by a sign writer, they certainly have an incredibly steady hand. Each side of this wagon, let's just take a look at that, does appear to be largely the same, in fact totally the same, even to the point where the ladders are mirrored, but I would guess that that is following the practice of the prototypical wagons. The bogies or trucks underneath, we have metal disc wheels, and they do actually seem to be pretty free running, and we do also then have a much more of a wealth of detail, some of the brake rigging on these bogies or trucks, and there's a lot of air visible through all the side pieces, so it really is quite a nice setup, and they are quite robust. I'm not entirely sure how they're attached to the wagon, but certainly they are reasonably well secured in there, and of course we've got the KD in the pocket, and with the screw down there means that you can change these for something else if you so choose. One thing that isn't mirrored is the colour scheme on the wagon. So you can see on this end of it we've got mostly picked out in black, some bits of yellow, but then we've also got this blue wheel with a representation of some kind of chain coming down, and I guess that this is to do with the operation of the bottom hopper doors. So there is a slight little platform there, and I can only assume that it was the means whereby a crew member can climb up here and open up those bottom hopper doors for discharging when the coal hopper reaches its destination. All in all, really lovely presentation. It's a good solid model as well, and I'm just feeling here it's pretty well put together. Even the struts inside are nice and secure, and it has all the makings of a nice beefy hopper that would be a run-a-day workhorse, and it is something that actually a nice weathering project, a gentle rub over with weathering powders, and maybe even some rust streaks as well, would certainly add to the realism of this wagon. But certainly for the price and the price point that I believe that these are being pitched at, it is a good solid release. The coal load itself is just a one-piece moulding, fits in over those ribs, but like I said, a slight layer of glue and then a dusting over with some crushed up real coal would certainly bring this insert alive, in my opinion. Moving on to the second wagon that Model Asia have sent across. Again, this looks to be a similar, if not identical, design wagon. In fact, yes, it is an identical design wagon, but just in a different livery. So whereas we have in the UK some very standardised coal hoppers, it would appear that in China pretty much exactly the same happens too. And these are very boxy, clearly designed to maximise payload within the space available. Again, we've got these tabs for pulling out the coal load, which actually does make it very easy, but obviously you can't really leave that in for the train running on your layout. But again, we've got the same type of coal load, one-piece plastic. And then looking at this model, the silver does look very garish on the inside, but again, I always advocate a good weathering. Even if you're going to run it with a more X-Works finish, I do think that this bright silver, when put on a model, does look a little bit better for just a slight matting down with a dusting of something like road dirt. But certainly, again, we've got another well-made hopper, all of that brake detail, and different character set, much smaller, much finer, but no sign of smudging whatsoever. And it really does pick it out nicely on the silver. Again, some more lettering down there. It's really, really tiny, but I'm pretty certain that we'll be able to read that under close magnification. More lettering on the sole bar, and you can on this see much better that assembly, which is a separately applied piece. It's not molded on for, again, I'm assuming controlling the discharge bottom doors. And with this as well, you can see that those are picked out in silver, which really does, again, bring them out from the detail on the chassis. It is a little bit more Spartan than some wagons we've seen, but actually, when sat on the track, you're not going to notice anything untoward. We've got that bright yellow end again, and I suspect that this, given that that's on the non-hopper opening end, is an aid for the crew to be able to, at a glance, see which end of the wagon has the discharge mechanism. And you can imagine that if they had been coupled up perhaps this way round, it just made it a lot easier to get in there and be right onto the discharge mechanism. So I am guessing that that's what that is for. The rest of the wagon, yellow picked out stairs. It seems to be fairly house style for the type of wagon. And I'm just looking there, and that is exactly the same lettering. So again, I'd be very interested to know what that actually says. And maybe it's something that we'll be able to look up online. All in all, really impressed with these. When it came to running on wear yard, they ran really, really well. They held the rails perfectly acceptably all through the track work, up and down gradients, and also through some quite complex point work. So all in all, very, very pleased with these. Now, these samples are going to go on now, and hopefully Model Asia are going to be able to find a UK-based stockist for not just these wagons, but also the rest of their range. And it'll be really interesting to even contemplate making a layout that sits somewhere on the other side of the world in a more unusual railway location. Well, certainly for the UK market, I very rarely see Chinese outline models. And as I said at the beginning, Model Rail Glasgow did provide a really interesting one, which did pique my interest, especially as these had just arrived before I went to the show. Well, I hope you found that video really informative, and I'm wondering what you thought of the Model Asia brand that I showed you today. Do leave a comment down below, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Also, if this is a marque that actually you already own or model with, again, really would love to hear from you and get your thoughts on this brand. Is this something that you would like to see your local model shop stock? If so, then maybe give them a prod and leave a comment down below as well. Also, don't forget that you can head on over to Patreon at the link down below to help support the channel to make the videos that you want to see. And don't forget that we've also got the merch store down below where you can buy the t-shirts, the hoodies, the mugs, the die cut stickers and everything else. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling. Bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, Michael Lockie, Helen Singh, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky 107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, MD of San Juan Model Company and Grant Line Products, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N. from NC, NYMR-ish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, NI Railways 4000 class, Ian Coulson, Alan Dickerson, Eddie Popper, Karen Nichol, Medwin Williams, Crossways Point Junction, and 3B Rail. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.